You know that Shevat, that's the day is Rosh Chodesh Shevat, the first day Shevat. Ha'il Moshe be'eretz haTorah zeis. That's the beginning of Chumash Devarim. It says that on the 11th month, the Moshe Rabbeinu began to explain the entire Torah. He spoke over the entire Torah. So that the month of Shvat, the Moshe Rabbeinu was repeating the whole Torah. So almost all of Chumash Devarim is in the month of Shevat. So why did he pick the month of Shevat? That's the day for repeating the entire Torah. Why then? Well, because he didn't have much time. His last day of his life was the 7th day of Adar. So that's the next month after Shvat is Adar. But besides that, it's like the right month. But the mazel of Shvat is mazel deli. You know, a mazel, we say mazel tov. Mazel tov literally means, like if you go around and say it in English, you're going to sound very bizarre. Imagine going to a wedding and wishing everybody good constellation, good constellation. It doesn't sound right, but that's what you're saying when you're saying mazel tov. Siman tov mazel tov yelanu kol Yisrael. So it means that you're saying to everybody that it's not just a nice thing that happened to these people, it's a siman tov and a mazel tov for us and for everybody, kol Yisrael. Meaning it's an auspicious time. That's how we like to say it, an auspicious time, an auspicious time. So a mazel literally means like a faucet, your nozel. A mazel is something through which something flows. So the shefa from above flows into this world through a mazel. So the Chachamim say in brachas, Gemara brachas, ein lecha kol esav milamata. There's no little herb growing here below, no blade of grass that doesn't have a mazel above that strikes it and tells it to grow. So it's basically like, think of the mazalos as perforations in the heavens through which the flow from above can come down into this world somehow. Like imagine like there's an entire membrane encompassing all of reality, and Hashem takes a little pin and makes little pinholes in it, and through that the shefa bracha can come into this world. And we even have a physical representation of it, because you look up in the skies and there they are. But that's just the physical representation within space of something that's happening in a deeper spiritual way, that it's coming down through these mazalas. So there's a cycle of 12 of them. And you ever think about that? Why there are 12 months? Why 12 mazalas? And each mazal takes that shefa bracha in a certain way and molds it so that it comes out according to that mazal. So if you have the mazal of Adar is the fish, mazal dag, so it's going to come out in a fishy way, something like that. In the mazal of Tishrei is the mazal of Moznaim, justice. So the shefa bracha comes in the month of Tishrei in a way of justice. And the same thing in each month, it's given a particular form to it because it's coming through a particular mazel. But the mazel of Shvat is mazel deli. It's just a bucket. In other words, it doesn't give any particular form to it. It just transfers it. That's all it does. It's the only one of the mazalos that all it is just a bucket. Just take it and deliver it. That's all. So that's why, there's a machlokas. Do the Jewish people have a mazel? It's a machlokus near the end of Masechah Shabbos. Yesh mazel Yisrael, ein mazel Yisrael. So some of the rabbis say Jewish people have no mazel. It doesn't mean they don't have any good luck. It means ein lo mazel. There's no mazel appointed. Like all the nations have a particular mazel. We don't have a mazel. It's just we're directly under God. That's it. Now others say, no, we have a mazel. And they bring all sorts of proof that we do have a mazel, nevertheless. And so fine, Avram was taken higher than the mazel, beyond the mazalos. And when we're listening to Hashem, we're doing what He wants. We don't have to worry about the mazalos and so on, but we still have a mazel. So there's an explanation. I saw it in different places from different sources, but they all say the same thing, that really there's no argument. Both those who say that we don't have a mazel and that we do have a mazel, both agree. Why? Because those who say that we do have a mazel, which mazel is it? It's mazel deli, the bucket, the month of Shevat. What do we call that in Latin? It's called Aquarius, because the mazel deli is a nothing. It doesn't give the shefa bracha any particular form. Just how it is above, that's how it's delivered above. So it is itself a nothing. And I think it's the Bnei Yisachar. Bnei Yisachar goes on beautiful stuff on this. Bnei Yisachar, he says, think of a bucket. And in the Hilchos Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, when you're talking about taking something from indoors to outdoors, so you're taking something from a Rishus Yachid to Rishus Rabbi, from a private domain to a public domain. Oh, you're not allowed to do that in Shabbos. Yeah, but you're only really breaking Shabbos if person's only chayav if he takes out something substantial. Like if you walk out of your house with some dust on you, well, you took dust outside. Well, the dust is not worth anything to anybody. You walked outside and you had some drops of water on your hand. Yeah, but it's drops of water. It's not substantial. You didn't break Shabbos, drops of water. Okay. So let's say you walked out of the house and you took a bucket with you. Well, you took a bucket with you. Well, what are you doing? So the Shabbos police comes. You walked out of your house with a bucket. You say, no, just a minute. Take a look. Look what's inside the bucket. What's inside the bucket? A little tiny drop of water. Oh, then it's okay. Why? Because I wasn't taking out the bucket. I was taking out the little tiny drop of water. And it's okay to take out a little tiny drop of water because that's not anything substantial. But what about the bucket? The bucket is just there for the sake of the little tiny drop of water. You see? So it's not a something. It doesn't count. The bucket becomes a nothing. You know about I think in Ontario right now, they're under lockdown, mamish lockdown. So a guy was stopped by the police. He's going for a walk. He and his wife are going for a walk. So he said, no. It's just my wife going for a walk. And the officer says, and what about you? He says, she's walking me. See, I got a leash. She's walking. She's just walking. So, okay, I don't know how that fits in. But basically, if you're taking out the water in a bucket, you don't say, you're sitting at a table and you want a glass of water. You don't say, pass the pitcher. You say, pass the water. Now, doesn't the pitcher feel bad? You totally ignore it? No, because the pitcher knows all I am is a container for the water. Just like on Shabbos, I'm just a container for the water. So I'm not a something. So that's how the mazel of Yisrael is ein. It's a nothing. It just delivers. It delivers the water. And ein maim ela Torah, the Chachamim say. When we say water, we only mean one thing. We mean Torah. So Moshe Rabbeinu saw it fit that this is the month to review the entire Torah from the beginning to end. And it says, Be'er es Torah zos. He says, he explained. But the word Be'er means also in Hebrew, a well. It's an interesting thing. A Be'er means to explain, and a Be'er means a well. So Moshe Rabbeinu explains the Torah in this month. So this is a month for our mazel beautiful mazel for teaching lots of Torah and spreading lots of Torah as far as you can. And you know, the Baal Shem Tov, when he had his Aliyas and Neshama on Rosh Hashanah one year, he wrote to his brother-in-law, his Neshama went up to a very, very high place, and he got up to the highest place in Gan Eden, is the Heichal of Mashiach. So he walks into this Heichal, this beautiful palace of Mashiach, goes right up to the Mashiach himself and says, "Nu, when are you coming already?" And the Mashiach answers him, "L'chshafutzu mayonosecha chutza." When your well springs, right? Think about a well, will spread all the way to the outside. So this is the month for spreading the well springs all the way to the outside. Mazel Dali, the Shevat Mazel. At the same time, talking right now about Parshas Va'era. So this is the beginning of Parshas Va'era is a very moving moment. The end of Parshas Shmos and the beginning of Parshas Va'era. It's very profound. The scene, very dramatic. Moshe Rabbeinu took a lot of convincing, and finally he says, "Okay, I'm going to go. I'll speak to Pharaoh, and because the people have to be redeemed, they're suffering, it's no good, they're suffering." So he goes, he does everything he's supposed to do, the people believe him, he goes to Pharaoh, and what happens? The suffering gets worse. And the people don't want to listen to Moshe. People are rebuking Moshe. They're angry at Moshe. They said, "Since you came here, you made it stink for us. We could have survived. And now you put a sword in Pharaoh's hand to kill us, to destroy us. What did you do?" Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't argue with the Jewish people. It doesn't say, "You have to have some faith. You have to hang in there, really." Or he doesn't tell them off and tell them, "Why don't you have any faith?" No. He goes to God and says, "Why have you done evil to this people?" He doesn't mince his word. Hareosa, you've done evil to this people. Why did you send me? Because since you sent me, things only got worse. It's a chutzpah. But that's how he speaks to God. Amazing. And God doesn't tell him off for that. God himself says, now you're going to see. Now you're going to see. Now all the miracles are going to begin. So the question always comes up. Why does it have to get worse before it can get better? What for? It's a beautiful medrash that expands on Moshe Rabbeinu's words. Chachamim say, Moshe Rabbeinu said to God, he said, "I opened up Sefer Bereshis, and I see it's a book of justice. When people do good, they're rewarded. When people do bad, they're punished. The generation of the flood were being bad, they were punished. The generation built that big tower, they were punished. I see it's a book of justice. I open up this book now, Sefer Shmeis. Where's justice? Where's tzedek? What did these people do wrong? Why are they suffering?" And Moshe Rabbeinu has no answer. Moshe Rabbeinu is Chachma V'Tzilas. He can't see. What is this all about? I know there are many wise people today who can explain to you all the suffering in the world, and they're so wise and intelligent, they can even explain the entire Holocaust. They can explain all of that. Apparently, Moshe Rabbeinu just wasn't smart enough, I guess. He couldn't explain it. I guarantee you, if he were here today, he would have no answer for the Holocaust either, or any of the suffering. So he could not explain this. And what does God say? Oh, now you're going to see. Well, what's the answer? Now you're going to see. Well, why did he have to have the suffering? So, in general, we say, well, this is the order of things, the order of how things work. Just like in order to breathe in, you have to breathe out. In order to leap upwards, you have to crouch downwards. In order to understand something, you have to go through a deep period of confusion. That's how Piaget came up with developmental psychology. That was his first insight. Paul Piaget was teaching children in Switzerland, and he found something very fascinating. When he explained a new idea to children, older children, he said there were those who, yeah, I get it right away. And there were those who, what? I don't understand. And we're very confused. What was fascinating was, ultimately, who understood best? Those who said right away, I got it, never really got the idea. They didn't really learn. The ones who said, I don't get it, and went through this painful confusion. It was painful to them that they didn't understand. They really got it in the end. Again. So that's the order of life, that in order to get to light, you have to go through darkness. And all the worlds are always in this rutsa v'shov. They're always climbing upwards, falling down, climbing back upwards, falling down. Everything is in this motion. All of energy goes in waves. All energy we know of goes in waves. So now there's about to be a very great geula, in order to have this great new light enter into the world that had never entered before, the light of Torah. There first had to be a period of darkness. The only way to get there is this darkness. Like when a big tsunami is coming, it's quiet before. And not only it's quiet, the sea recedes, goes all the way back in. Like if you're ever there at the beach and you see that the ocean is suddenly going way, way out there, run for your life. It's receding because there's a tsunami coming the other way. So there's this silence that comes before. And there's another analogy given for it is when the student is learning, the teacher is teaching, and there's a connection between them. And the student is learning better and better. And then finally, the student gets to the point where he says, but teacher, and he asks a really good question. When he asks that really good question, the teacher sees, oh, now he's ready for something much, much deeper. Now that he's asked the question, now I can really give him the answers. Because you can't really teach anything to anybody unless they have a question. Here's the question. He asked it. Now I can give it. So what's the first thing that the teacher does? The teacher is quiet. Why is the teacher quiet? Well, for one thing, the teacher has to think. Now I have to rethink everything, how I'm transmitting information, transmitting knowledge, educating this student. Now it's going to be in a whole different way. It has to be much deeper. I have to myself go much, much deeper into what is it that I'm trying to say and how the student's going to get it. That's one reason. The other reason is the student needs that space of silence. The student needs to be able to, first of all, say, oh yeah, I asked a question. My teacher's thinking about it. You value an answer so much more when somebody thought about it beforehand. You want somebody to listen to your answer to a question. Don't answer right away. Look, even if you have the answer right away, look as though you're thinking. Create some silence. Every performing artist, I'm sure Yehuda can tell you, values silence is the most valuable note you have in all your arsenal is the silence, because that's where you make space for your audience. You make space for your student, your listener, to enter into the art, into the communication, that silence. And especially when the student's saying, well, but where is the answer? What happened to you? Teacher, where are you? Come on, I need that answer. So the silence. And then afterwards can come now we come in with a full answer, with all the light. All the light comes now. So Golus Mitzrayim was not a punishment. It was the darkness before the light. The olive had to be crushed to get out the olive oil. The student had to go through this in order to receive Torah afterwards. And so immediately before the light is the greatest darkness. They say the greatest darkness is right before dawn. I don't know if it's darker before dawn, but I certainly know it's the coldest time of day. The coldest time of the 24-hour period is just before the sun starts coming out. So that was that lapse there in Egypt. I hope you're not satisfied with that answer. Because if somebody's satisfied with that answer, I would say, what type of a God have you got? He has to do things this way? Who told him? Why couldn't he made things different? Well, you say, well, that's just the way things go, things got it, it's in waves, it just has to be. So he's God. Don't make the world that way. Make it just goes like this, It doesn't have to go like this. It's another mashal, famous mashal of the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov talks about a circular staircase. He says, you see, there's a palace up there. Way up in the sky is a palace. And there's a gateway into the palace. And you want to go into that gateway of the palace. You want to go in there. How do you get there? It's up in the sky. Then you see there's a circular staircase going from the earth up to the gateway of the palace. So you start going. But what happens as soon as you start going up the staircase, you can't see the palace anymore. It's gone. So you think, wait, I went on this circular staircase in order to get into the palace, and now I can't even see the palace. I'm not going towards it, I'm going further from it. But you keep going. Well, most people give up at that point. Some people keep on going, and when we keep on going, oh, there's the palace. What do you know? I'm even closer. I'm going to go more. And then you keep going more. It's gone. There's no palace anymore. I don't see it. I'm totally lost. I don't know what's going on over here. I'll give up. At that point, by this point, you got 99.9% of people have given up already. They keep on going. And that's the cycle it goes in. In other words, if you feel that you're just constantly going upwards and upwards all the time, something's really, really wrong. You're going in the wrong direction. If you feel that I was just getting there and everything fell apart, and then I'm getting there then, and then everything really falls apart. Oh, now you're going somewhere. But the question is, why couldn't he make a world where it just goes visibly upwards all the time? And, you start off with chocolates and candies, and then you get better chocolates and candies, and then even better chocolates and candies, until you get the ultimate chocolates and candies. Okay, so it doesn't make sense in our little minds, but why couldn't he? In other words, why couldn't he create a world with only light and no darkness? We can't imagine it. How could there be light with no darkness? It's a binary, it has to be. But he doesn't have to make all these binaries. He can do whatever he wants. Why can't he make a world just with good and none of the damn suffering? Why not? Well, we'll give all sorts of explanations. But he's God. Why can't he? That's the real question. And it is really the only question. It's a question that Torah creates. It's as though the entire Torah is about creating this question for you. Like, without Torah, you have many, many questions. Torah says, really, it's all this one question. The beginning of the Torah, Bereshis, Rashi says, Eina mikra haza emer ela darsheni. This mikra, the very first line in Torah, is saying darsheni, ask a question. That's what it's saying. Ask, ask. And what do you know? If you count all the words in Torah, you get to the middle of the Torah is a white space. And on one side of it, it says dorash, and on the other side, it says dorash. Darosh, darash means ask a question, ask a question. And in the middle is the white space. The white space is for you to ask the question. So the whole of Torah is a type of tension, creating a question for you, or giving you this white space. It's a frame around this white space, which is like demanding from you, ask the question. What is the question? Say about the guy who comes up to the heavenly court and they ask him, well, we're giving you a chance. You did this and we want an explanation. You did this. Doesn't look good. We want an explanation. And he says, I'm supposed to give you an explanation? Why were there babies suffering in the world? Why did good people have to go through much trouble? Why is there hypocrisy? How could there be evil in God's world? That's good. They say, oh, listen, you have a very good question. We'll escalate the matter. We'll send you to a higher court and a higher court and a higher court until he gets before the great mahogany desk in the sky. There's God himself, and he asks all of his questions. Why was there evil in the world? And God says to him, congratulations. He says, congratulations. He says, yes, yeah, you got the right question. What did you do about it? So the Torah is forcing you to ask this question. But the Torah can't answer it for you. Because if the Torah would answer it for you, then once you have an answer, everything's okay. Right? Now I understand. It doesn't bother me anymore. Oh, that would be no good. That's one thing God cannot tolerate, is that people should be pacified and placated with an answer, and therefore no longer outraged about that there's suffering and evil in the world. So he just creates a situation that creates a question for us and says, now run with it, now do something about it. That's the answer I heard was Hoshana Rabbah 1982. Hoshana Rabbah 1982, Tafshin Mem Gimel. In the 770, the Rebbe gave that answer and he was sobbing and sobbing and crying while he was giving that answer. It's very moving. Very, very important. Anyway, so right now, that means two things. Now is a time this month for teaching lots of Torah and learning lots of Torah. You can teach it. And Torah initiates that question inside you, and do something about it. Change it. Nice to see everybody. Have a good Chodesh Tov. And good Shabbos, everything good.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Freeman.
Thank you. Bye-bye.